Morning guys, and welcome to Max Talk. So I just did a talk number 26 on the standing reload and on the idea of dropping magazines, and a good talk about that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to come out here and we're going to do the combat reload. Let's put that into perspective a little bit. So this is basic weapon manipulation. We shouldn't be spending our whole lives on basic weapon manipulation. What we need to do is master it, master the basics, so that we can move on to tactical training and so that we can build the whole warrior. We will, of course, be practicing and conducting a whole bunch of weapon manipulation as part of that. But as we begin our training, or as we bring our training up to speed, then what we need to do is get hold of these basics and get a grip of them. It shouldn't be a mystery, guys. So let's talk about a few things here. So in general, with weapon manipulation, what we want to be doing is we want to be keeping the firing hand. For me, I'm a right eye dominant, right-handed shooter. Okay, we want to keep the firing hand on the pistol grip. We don't want to break the firing grip if at all possible. There's a couple of reasons why we will break that firing grip, and mainly that's going to come down to when we have to lock the bolt to the rear. So locking the bolt to the rear, then obviously we bring the right hand in to do that, and we're locking the bolt to the rear. It's just to do with how the AR is set up. Okay, but other than that, we keep the firing hand on the pistol grip, and we're going to do things with our support hand. So for me, in this example, my support hand is my left hand. So what that means is that when it comes to reloads, etc., then I'm going to be doing that with my support hand wherever I've got those magazines. Today I'm just wearing a battle belt, and that's where my magazines are going to come from. So a few points on basic weapon manipulation. Now, what is a combat reload? A combat reload is when we are engaged in a contact with the enemy and we are expending rounds at the enemy and we shoot our magazine dry. So we have an empty magazine. The key part of what I just said there was that we are engaged in a firefight with the enemy. So we were shooting and we were intending to shoot, and then we're interrupted in doing that because our magazine has been shot dry. So our priority at this time is to get rounds back in the gun in order to be able to continue the engagement. Of course, that's a generalization, but that's the principle we base the combat reload around. So what's going to happen with the AR is that when you fire that last round out of the magazine, your bolt's going to lock to the rear. It's actually going to lock to the rear like this. And your magazine's going to be empty, and so what you'll see is the bolt's locked to the rear and there's no ammunition to be seen. So if you look at the ejection port, you're going to see top of an empty magazine, no rounds in the chamber at all. Okay. Now you may notice when your bolt locks to the rear, especially if you're expecting it, because it makes a different sound when you pull the trigger and it's the last round in the magazine, because the bolt locks to the rear. It makes that kind of like clunk to the rear, or whatever you want to call it. So you may notice that, but the way we train this is that, and if you do notice that, that's all well and good. But we train this for high stress situations, so with a lot of noise and a lot of things going on, so we train that you don't notice that. So what we train is that you have a dead trigger. So you're firing the weapon is firing, and now the weapon stops firing. Triggers, you pull the trigger, nothing's happening. So what we've got is what we call the common first step. The common first step, anytime the weapon does not fire when you intend it to fire, is to look at and check the ejection port. And we generally want to include the ejection port in a lot of what we're doing, including in our scan, because it's always going to be Murphy's Law that you'll have a double feed, or you'll have an empty mag, or something's going on, and you don't look at that as part of your scan, and you move on to the next situation, and there you go, you got a problem. So the common first step is to look at the ejection port, and that's going to tell us what we need to know in order to fix what may be an empty magazine, but it may be a malfunction of some sort. And of course we've got a whole, and I'll probably do further Max talks on this as we go through the weapon manipulation. I have actually covered, in the beginning of the tactical manual, I have covered the weapon manipulation, stoppage drills, etc. that you should need to know. And so I'm probably going to do practical sessions on that. None of this is a secret, guys. We take you through this as part of MVT training. But it shouldn't be a secret, and it shouldn't be a mystery. guys, it's basics. You've got to master it before you can move on to build the whole warrior. So, if we're engaging the enemy and we have a stoppage, what we need to think about is three things. Three things. The first one is improving your position of cover. Now, the way we do that, for the drill that I'm going to show you, is we're just going to adjust our position. So I'm going to demonstrate the drill in a standing position, which in a sense is unrealistic in many circumstances unless we're actually shooting on the move. But I'm going to demonstrate the drill in the standing position, and then to show you that I'm going to improve my position of cover, I'm going to simply drop to a knee. And that's to simulate that I'm improving my position of cover. We're not just going to conduct these drills standing in the face of the enemy. And what's really going to happen, guys, is if you do actually have a stoppage where you're reacting to enemy fire and you're in a standing position, you're going to be moving to cover anyway. You're either going to be moving to cover even though your weapon is still operating, or you have a stoppage in that standing reaction and you're going to move to cover to fix it and then continue on with the firefight at that point. So the first thing you want to do is think about adjusting your position of cover. The only time, and I'll cover this a little bit later in the talk, that you're not going to do that is if you're doing some kind of drill like an assault through or a break contact, where you may consider changing the magazine, conducting a combat reload on the move. And I'll sort of do that at the end. The second thing you're going to want to do is communicate. Now, using whatever terms that you want to use, we generally teach to yell stoppage. You could yell out, empty, whatever it is that you're going to do to communicate to your team members that your weapon went down. And at this point you don't know why it went down. Okay, so we usually just yell stoppage as a general term. And that covers malfunction, it covers all of it. And then the third thing you're going to do is that common first step that I just mentioned. So you're going to look inside, obviously now in a position of cover, we're going to look inside the ejection port to figure out what's going on. And if we look inside the ejection port and we see the top of an empty magazine, we see the follower, and we see no rounds in the chamber at all, the bolt is locked to the rear, then we know we've got to perform a combat reload. So what I'll do is I'm going to actually demonstrate this live. So we're going to conduct that, and I will talk you through the drill and then demonstrate the drill. Now, the way I'm going to run it today is I've got magazines loaded with 4 rounds, and that's for a reason. I'm going to conduct the drill using control pairs. Well, control pairs, hammer pairs. And that's just a default setting that we're going to use for these basic drills. So we're just going to fire hammer pairs or control pairs. And if I've got 4 rounds in a magazine, that gives me, when I put the fresh magazine on, it gives me an initial control pair, after which I can yell back in to let my buddies know that I'm back in. And it then gives me another control pair before the weapon goes down again, and then I'm back into my stoppage drill. So running magazines of 4 rounds is kind of how we run this drill. Don't want to get sidetracked too much, but yes, communication such as stoppage, back in, depending on the circumstances, that may not be heard. But we train it anyway, and you know, it's a good habit to get into. If your buddy's next to you, he's going to get a general idea of what's going on. Obviously, a lot of this is implicit communication. It's whether you're firing or not. And if you're training, you'll start to understand that situation where, you know, is my buddy firing? Is he covering me or not? And we're using implicit communication, maybe even hand signals, rather than actually relying on trying to hear people. So that's, you know, a little bit more advanced. Okay, guys, so here I am. I'm on patrol or whatever, and I'm going to run the drill. So here we go. So we get a contact, so bring the weapon up. We fire our hammer pair. Fire the next one. Go to fire the next one. Dead trigger. As I mentioned, I may have already known that, and because I loaded 4 rounds in the magazine, I definitely already knew that. But we're playing the training game here. So what I'm going to do is improve my position of cover. In this case, I'm going to drop to a knee. I'm going to yell stoppage. At the same time, I'm going to look into the magazine, into the ejection port right there. Now, when you're starting these drills, you may sort of do those actions sequentially, but as you get better at it, it's going to be something that happens simultaneously. So simply adjusting our position of cover is going to be into cover, stoppage! Okay, so check the ejection port. It's a combat reload. all we're going to do is drop the magazine off. I talked in Max Talk 026 about why we're going to do that. Our priority is to get the weapon back into the fight right now. If I get a chance to retain that magazine, I will. If it's a life and death situation, then my life is not worth that magazine. What I'll do is I'll go get my next magazine, which of course is 4 rounds. I'll place it on the weapon, push pull, make sure it clicks into place. I'll just move my thumb up and I'll hit the bolt release. And then back in! Stoppage! I could go to the prone position from here for the sake of argument and the camera. I'm just going to stay here. So I would improve my position to cover, look inside the ejection port, yell stoppage. I can see from that it's a combat reload. Just drop the magazine off. Get my fresh magazine. Place it to the magazine well, push pull, make sure it clicks into place. Hit the bolt release. Back in! Stoppage! Alright guys, so please understand that what I'm showing you here is a drill. So this is not necessarily what I'm telling you to do in the face of the enemy, and I'm not telling you, I'm saying this for YouTube, I'm not telling you that I'm just going to take a knee right here, but what I'm showing as part of the drill is improving the position of cover. And I'm actually not going prone because I'm going to be outside camera shot. Okay, so doing my best here. Alright, so having sort of talked through that drill, let's have a look at this. So here I am, and 4-round magazines again. So, threat! Stoppage! Back in! Stoppage! Back in! Stoppage! And that was my final mag. One thing I should add is that I didn't put the safety on during that drill. In my experience, I found that if people put the safety on during a malfunction or stoppage drill, what they're going to do is they're going to mess themselves up because they're not going to realize they put it on. There is no need to put the safety on because you are keeping the weapon pointed in the direction of the enemy and you are simply keeping it facing the threat as you do the quick reload. You don't want to slow yourself down. There are situations where you will put the safety on, and that is if you are actually deciding to change magazines on the move. So I'm going to just go through quickly a couple of situations now where you may change magazines on the move, and that means you're going to have to sort of orient the weapon in different directions. So the first one I want to talk about is if we're doing some kind of break contact drill. So for the sake of how the camera is, I'll pretend that I'm doing a peel drill. And so enemies that way, I'm going to be peeling towards the camera just to show you I'm going to fire my last couple of rounds. I'm going to move, and as I move, I'm going to fix the combat reload on the move so that when I come back into position, I'm ready to fire. Now to do that, I obviously need to orient the weapon up so that I can do this so I'm not going to be flagging anybody else. And this is not something we would do in a basic class because we don't want people waving weapons around doing combat reloads as they're moving in a break contact drill. And this is something I talked about in detail on Max Talk 26. So, you know, please go also have a look at that. This is just a practical demonstration. So let's just do that and see how we might actually change the magazine on the move as we're peeling or bounding back or otherwise breaking contact. Simple demonstration, guys. Moving! And that included a nice tap rack bang just for your benefit. Okay, I also talked about what we might do if we're doing an assault through. We want to stay with the line. We don't want to stop, we don't want to go to cover if at all possible. We don't want to have to hold the line on an assault through. So we'll just change mags as we're going forwards. Also for training, this is simpler because we're just orienting downrange as we move downrange with our weapons. And so we just keep the weapon pointed down the range as we do a quick mag change. So I'll just do a quick demonstration of that as well. Assault through! Assault through! I may have missed that, so I'll just try that one again. Assault through! Assault through! Alright guys, so just a quick run through of the combat reload with a couple of extra bits on top. At its very basic level, combat reload, you're shooting the weapon, you're in a firefight. You're trying to shoot at the enemy, trying to engage the enemy, weapon stops firing. Three things: improve your position of cover, yell stoppage, look at the ejection port. Identify this combat reload, drop the mag off, fresh mag on, push pull, make sure it's in place. It's always embarrassing when the mag falls off. Hit the bolt release, bang bang, back in. That's all we're looking at. Very simple stuff. Guys, this weapon manipulation should not be a mystery. It should not be complicated. You need to master this. You're going to be using it all the time as you're conducting tactical training, as you're building the whole warrior. Please subscribe, like, share, etc. Thanks very much for your time.